Okay, Wampa, will you let me record? Do you think we can record now? Have you gotten enough snuggles? You good? Okay, let's go. I wish that I could tell you that I was a great writer in grad school, that it was something that I really excelled at, that it was easy for me, and that I'm here to share with you the things that come naturally to me that will help you become as proficient and easeful as I was as a graduate student writer. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I struggled, I found it difficult, and I really needed to reach out for support. So trust me when I tell you that community and incorporating aspects of sharing my writing in community, whether that was formally or informally, is what actually turned my graduate writing career around from something that I was doing alone by myself, isolated, scared, overwhelmed, and into something that I could feel confident with, and confident in my own thinking and my own ability to be a good community scholar. So in this video, I'm going to talk about three main benefits for writing in community, why I think it's useful, why I think it's important to value, even if it quote unquote takes time away from some of your other activities. I'm going to talk about two different ways that it might show up for you as a grad student, and I'm going to give everybody one thing that they can do immediately after this video to see if there's a place where they can invite a little bit more community into their personal writing practice. So let's get into it. The three main benefits, I think, of writing in community are that it normalizes the struggles and kind of challenges of academic writing as a professional skill and a daily practice. It gives you, number two, a chance to practice some of the really difficult skills that are involved in academic writing in a lower stakes or more comfortable venue. And number three, it eases isolation, which is one of the top challenges that I'm seeing in my clients right now, especially in the great what have you, but is useful even when we have access to conferences, seminars, reading groups, and things that might meet in person. So, number one, the idea that writing in community can really normalize struggles and make you feel like you're not the only person that finds this hard. I know that for me, when I sat down to start trying to write my dissertation proposal, I got really overwhelmed. I'd never written something that long before. I'd never written anything that was that complex. I'd never really had a class or even somebody sit me down and say, this is what should be included in a document like this. So when I struggled to put that document or that first draft together, I really internalized the idea that it was hard for me because I wasn't good enough. When in reality, it was hard to write a dissertation proposal because it's extremely hard to think through and create a plan and support that plan that will become a PhD thesis or dissertation. So joining a writing group gave me a chance to have a venue to talk through and observe other people's writing practices. It was revolutionary for me to be able to work with other people who said, yes, this is hard, or yes, I really struggle with this part, or I'm totally lost, or I'm finding it hard to structure this argument in a way that makes sense. It didn't ease or completely take away every one of those imposter feelings. I still would get nervous. I still would get anxious. I still would worry about whether or not it was good enough. But it really did help give me some evidence against the idea that it was hard because I wasn't good enough. I had a real solid group of people and evidence to point to say, you know, this is hard because it's hard. So number two, a writing group or a community writing practice can give you a chance to practice some writing adjacent skills in ways that might feel more low stakes or a little bit more generous. So I know that when I made the transition from PhD coursework into my more independent research, that it was really hard for me to think through and work on my ideas because I really missed the verbal back and forth that I would get in, say, a seminar space. So to join a writing group and have actual live human beings to talk through my writing with me, and to have those human beings being people who are colleagues of mine and not necessarily my advisor or another faculty member that I wanted desperately and needed in some cases to impress. Having that group of people to talk through my ideas was so important. I am a much better verbal processor than I am writer. It's been true my whole life. And so to have a writing group ask me questions about my writing and to be able to record those sessions, even better, gave me a chance to think out loud, to do that in a space where I could get some immediate back and forth feedback, and to feel like I was doing the same work as my academic writing, but in a way where I felt so much more confident. I can't tell you the boost that it would give me to work through my ideas with a writing group and then sit down to write the next draft. It was like the most supportive seminar group that I could imagine, even though the people in my writing group weren't in my discipline at all. So it really shifted the work, the intellectual work, out of the isolated writing zone and into a place where I could get feedback. It made all the difference. The third huge benefit for writing in community is that it reduces isolation. It's exactly what it sounds like, that you go from writing alone by yourself into writing with other people and for other people. I think as academics, it can be really easy to internalize and work from the idea that anyone who might encounter your writing in the future is there to tear it apart, to find the holes, to find the gaps so that they can write the piece that does your work, but even better. That's what we've been cultured to do in some seminars. It's certainly what publishing culture looks like in certain fields. It is really easy to imagine that your writing goes out into the world to be criticized and critiqued, whether that is in a constructive way or sometimes not at all. So to have a different group of people who are just invested in making your writing the most clear, the most compelling version of itself that it can be, it really reduces that feeling that writing is going to be a competitive, combative experience where you have to perfectly nail a draft so that it's bulletproof, so that nobody can tear it down. Having a group to work with you and say, okay, these parts are a little bit shaky. How can we structure this? I got confused over here. And to have those conversations not necessarily take place in a shadowy reviewer two's office, for example, can really make it so that you are practicing the best of what academic writing can and should be, which is that you have an idea, an original source, an original archive, an original framework. It comes from your brain, and the writing is the pathway from your brain into something that can be shared, that can be taken, that can be used, that can inspire. A writing group doesn't necessarily do all of those things, but it's certainly an interesting and important, I think, stopping station, especially for grad students who might not have had a lot of experience having their writing publicly or even personally or privately critiqued. So those three are three of, I'm sure, myriad benefits, but I think those are three to highlight, especially for those people who have been encouraged to stay away from writing groups, that it takes too much time, that it's a commitment that you can't afford. I can't tell you how many times I hear from clients that their advisor has really discouraged them away from the sharing of their work. There are sometimes good reasons for that, whether it's kind of proprietary information or you maybe are on a really tight deadline and you can't afford it. But in general, I think that practicing writing and academic life in general as more of a community practice has benefits, even if it quote unquote takes time away from the possible minutes of your life that you could be writing. So there are two main ways that writing in community can kind of show up. One that I've alluded to already are formal writing groups. They are groups of people who assemble together with a shared purpose of writing together. Sometimes those are just accountability groups, and sometimes those are groups that actually share drafts and do feedback together. But But a formal writing group can be a really important structure. If you're a person who likes a little bit of external accountability to help make those deadlines feel real, then a writing group can be a really great low-stakes way to build in some deadlines, some accountability, some feeling of, I need to make sure that I don't waste these people's time by making sure this draft is done. Or I want to make sure that I prioritize reading this draft so I can give really good feedback to my group members. If that kind of external accountability really appeals to you, then a writing group is a great place to build it with people who don't necessarily have their finger on your graduate student success pulse in the way that your chair or advisor might. The second sort of writing and community practice is something that can be a lot less formal than that. So a writing group sometimes can be as formalized as having contracts. What will happen if people don't submit drafts or submit feedback in a timely manner or when they're supposed to? An informal writing group can be something that meets a little bit less regularly. I think the most famous example of these are the Shut Up and Write groups that form on Twitter. You can search for them in a hashtag. They're groups that sort of assemble together for the act of writing to build accountability and visibility in those stages, but they might not necessarily share feedback or read each other's writing necessarily. I love informal writing groups. I think work together sessions are great. We have them every weekday in the community that I run, Thrive PhD, but there are also all kinds of free activities. And I know I see every day on Twitter different universities who are organizing both formal and informal writing groups. So if this is something that's appealing to you, definitely look and see what options are available. There are really expensive paid options. There are free community options. Maybe it's even something that you self-organize. But whether they're formal or informal, I think community writing is a really great practice. Which leads us to my one challenge assignment for everybody who wants to take it up. It's a journaling question. Surprise, surprise. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm a really big fan of reflective writing, of journaling, even if you just sort of think through it in your head. But the question that I would love to leave you with is, what part of a community feels most nourishing to you right now as a writer? Is it the sense of visibility that your writing matters, that someone will read it? Is it the accountability of having a draft due and people who are expecting it and not wanting to waste their time? Is it the actual act of sharing feedback? Is it the normalizing of learning how to do this process with other people who are learning it too? Identifying which of those things feels the most needed right now or the most nourishing or the most appealing is one way to help build something on purpose. So I talk about this a lot in my coaching practice and with clients, but thinking about what it is that you most need so that you can address it specifically. So it's great to say, hey, I want to join a writing group, but if you join a writing group that's primarily about accountability and you want to be able to actually share feedback, then that group isn't going to be a good match for you. So really narrowing down which parts of these feel great, what parts feel nourishing is going to help you find a writing and community experience that's going to serve the need that you actually have. So please feel free to leave any thoughts in the comments. I am so excited to have continued this March Madness series with you, and I hope that no matter how it looks, your writing can be served by community sometime in the future.